Good afternoon and welcome back. You're watching the Midday Report and I'm your host, Klaudia Czerwińska. In just a few minutes, key Polish-German government consultations are set to begin in the German capital, with Chancellor Friedrich Merz and Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk in attendance. The Polish Prime Minister is not going to leave Berlin empty-handed, as Germany will return historic items looted by Nazi Germans during World War II, including an invaluable archive of the knightly Teutonic Order.
Chancellor Friedrich Merz is welcoming Prime Minister Donald Tusk to Berlin on Monday for key Polish-German government consultations. And Merz will have a gift, the return of valuable cultural artifacts stolen from Poland by the Nazis during World War II. Experts say it's a major move forward in relations between Warsaw and Berlin.
The German side has tended to draw a line after World War II. And especially has denied any Polish requests for reparations. And so now returning artworks is a very important step.
Germany will return archives related to the Teutonic Order, looted from Warsaw, and a sculpture depicting a saint's head stolen from Malbork Castle in northern Poland, according to the Onet News website. Poland was never fully compensated for the losses it suffered at the hands of the Nazis. Germany has argued the issue is legally moot since the Soviet Union forced communist Poland to renounce reparations claims. Analysts say Warsaw is likely to make further demands on Berlin in the future.
Polish government is likely to come with further demands for reparations, not because the Tusk government believes that Germany has to pay further reparations, but because there's immense domestic pressure, not least from President Karol Nawrocki, who even at his inaugural visit to Berlin earlier this year reiterated demands for 1.5 billion euros at least in reparations.
Ahead of Monday's talks, major German media outlets reported that Polish-German relations aren't working. The Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung wrote that there is a mutual lack of interest in maintaining positive ties, which has become a tool for some political parties, especially in Poland, where dissatisfaction with Germany's exploitation of past tragedies for political gains remains high. Aside from Tusk, several senior Polish ministers will be present in Berlin, including those responsible for foreign affairs, defence, energy and culture. Issues related to cooperation, security and defence are likely to be high on the agenda, even if it's the return of cultural artefacts that's set to grab the headlines.
And now to Belgium. European defense ministers are in Brussels on Monday, taking part in the Foreign Affairs Council meeting to discuss Ukraine's defense needs and, most importantly, how to finance them. For more, we now go live to Brussels to our correspondent, Alex Cadier. Good afternoon, Alex. So what's the latest on what's been discussed so far? Do we know of any new support that's coming Ukraine's way? Tell us more.
Well, good afternoon, Claudia. I was actually just speaking in the last few seconds to Paweł Zalewski, the minister representing Poland here at this defense ministerial. I asked him exactly that. What was the mood in the room? What was discussed? And he said it is very important that this meeting focused on reiterating messages of support from European powers to Ukraine, organizing longer-term support through EU mechanisms like SAFE, which allows 150 billion euros in borrowing, but also opens up further public borrowing for European countries to spend on their own defense and on joint defense investments with Ukraine. He also spoke about one of those key topics about European support, that reparations loan, 140 billion euros worth. The Polish position expressed by the minister, very clear. He wants that reparations loan to go through. Ukraine needs financial stability, needs financial predictability, and this loan will allow Ukraine to cover the next 2 years of military and civilian funding. But he also acknowledged that Belgium has some reservations and that the Commission is working around the clock to get that done. Now, a final point from my conversation with the minister, and it is relevant, of course, to this defence ministerial here in Brussels, is an interview we saw in the FT earlier today from the head of NATO's military committee, Admiral Giuseppe Dragone. He was saying that NATO will be more proactive when it comes to hybrid threats from Russia. The Polish minister vocally very supportive, saying absolutely the lessons from Poland is that we have to be there able to react when there's a threat, not just after an attack. So clearly that support from Poland, support for the reparations loan and support for Ukraine. Claudia.
That was Alex Kadir reporting live from Brussels. And we continue. French President Emmanuel Macron has welcomed Volodymyr Zelensky in Paris for talks regarding continued European support for Ukraine. The heads of state are expected to discuss the requirements of a lasting peace deal and the continued cooperation of the coalition of the willing in order to secure a ceasefire for Ukraine. This comes shortly after Ukrainian and U.S. negotiators met in Florida to discuss peace proposals, with both sides agreeing that discussions were productive. Zelensky hopes to secure support from the French for a peace deal that safeguards Ukrainian interests. The Ukrainian president has been a regular visitor to Paris ever since the start of the full-scale invasion in February of 2022. President Donald Trump's special envoy for peace mission, Steve Witkoff, is traveling to Moscow later on Monday to discuss U.S. proposals to end the war in Ukraine. The Kremlin says he's scheduled to meet with Russian officials tomorrow. Witkoff will share updated documents with his Russian counterparts, which reflects discussions held with representatives from Kyiv and European leaders. Witkoff was labeled a traitor last week as a U.S. bipartisan backlash and rebuked by the EU for the 28-point peace plan, which was seen as pro-Russian. Opponents said the proposals rewarded Russia as the aggressor by suggesting Ukraine hand over land to Russia currently controlled by Kyiv. The plan has subsequently been revised. It's normal for nuance to get lost in translation, but a slip-up by an interpreter at high-level talks can lead to diplomatic miscommunications. Hungarian media has reported that Viktor Orbán's interpreter at Friday's meeting with Vladimir Putin made glaring errors that twisted the Russian leader's message. When Putin said, quote, "Our views on certain issues, including international affairs, do not necessarily coverage," the interpreter translated it to, "Our cooperation at the international level is also good." Putin's statements had the essence of their meaning wrapped to express the opposite. The first to call out the interpreter on their mistakes, notably omitting Putin's admissions that the two leaders' views do not necessarily converge on international affairs, was the Hungarian media. Considered Putin's most stalwart European ally, Orbán visited Moscow days before Russia's talks on a U.S. push to end the war in Ukraine, in a move that has been interpreted as a defiance of the EU. Georgian authorities have used a World War I-era chemical weapon during anti-government protests to crack down on demonstrators. That's according to an investigation by the BBC. After clashes with riot police, many anti-government demonstrators who took to the streets of Tbilisi last year to protest the suspension of Georgia's EU accession bid reported lingering health problems, including shortness of breath, coughing, and weeks-long bouts of vomiting. In investigating these claims, the BBC spoke with doctors, chemical weapons experts, and whistleblowers from the Georgian riot police who pointed to the possible use of a World War I-era toxic compound known as camite. Georgian authorities dismissed the BBC's findings as absurd, defending the actions of their police force and insisting it had responded lawfully to what they described as the illegal actions of brutal criminals. Poland's Statistics Office has released the final GDP figures for the third quarter of this year. The results have come out above earlier flash estimates, surprising analysts.
According to updated figures from the National Statistics Office, Poland's GDP growth is showing continued upward momentum. In the third quarter of 2025, it grew by 3.8% compared to last year, and this result came in slightly higher than the earlier flash estimate of 3.7%. The report shows stronger than expected investment, up more than 7%, a result bolstered greatly by continued disbursement of EU funds. But private consumption, however, grew by only 3.5%, falling short of economists' forecasts. Analysts at Bank Pekao say the structure of the growth was not what forecasters anticipated, with more investment and less consumption powering the economy in the third quarter. They note, therefore, that the broader outlook will remain unchanged, with Poland still expected to finish the year with around 3.6% GDP growth.
It is double jubilee time for Warsaw's Grand Theatre National Opera, home to the Polish National Opera and the National Ballet. The institution marks 200 years since its foundation stone was laid and 60 since the building was rebuilt after World War II. Karolina Szapland reports.
This is, without a question, the gala of the season, the double anniversary of what is arguably Poland's most esteemed cultural institution, Teatr Wielki, or the Grand Theatre. It was here in 1825 when a foundation stone was laid for this magnificent building, designed by Antonio Corazzi. Two milestones were celebrated: the theatre's original creation in 1825 and its rebirth 6 decades ago after the wartime destruction that left little more than a shell. Since its reopening in 1965, Teatr Wielki has stood as a reminder of how culture persists through upheaval. Just before the gala, Executive Director Borys Kudliczka shared his thoughts.
We are celebrating 200th anniversary of our beautiful house, and I call it specially house because it is a house of 1,000 people who's this second house. And we are the company that has two artistic fields. It's a ballet and the opera.
The evening performance features some of the Grand Theatre's most iconic opera and ballet moments, opening with a stirring polonaise in A-flat major. On the red carpet, Warsaw's cultural world gathered alongside the president, ministers and artists, many recalling what this place has meant to them over the years.
I was here first time when I was 14 years old, and actually because of my school teacher, I was going around here, and it was like my first visit in the theater in general. And since then, I was starting to go to the theater, and I was starting to be interested in this world.
I visited so many times the opera and the Grand Theatre with my daughter, and it's also a special place for me because of that.
And before the curtain goes down on tonight's gala, here is to another 200 years of this most esteemed cultural institution. For TVP World, I'm Karolina Szapland.
Cities across Europe and the Baltic states are embracing the festive season with lights, music and celebrations. Ljubljana streets glow with a striking light installation, while Helsinki's Senate Square draws crowds through its Christmas market and carousel. Communities across the region are joining together to welcome the holidays in style.
Christmas has arrived in major European cities. In Warsaw, a Christmas market has popped up in the city center.
It's the first time there's a market like this in Warsaw. Usually there were smaller ones, for example in the Old Town. I'm really impressed. I've been living in Warsaw for several years and my sister is visiting me here. And honestly, this is something that really gives a wow effect, especially the Ferris wheel.
Brussels has kicked off the holiday season with an impressive light display.
It's very impressive, like all the square with the lights and all the also the performance and all the people in here. It's like very Christmas ambience, I think.
And Slovenia's capital, Ljubljana, now offers visitors the chance to stroll through a specially designed Christmas market, or even take a double-decker carousel ride.
If you live in Ljubljana, you have come to see the lights, and if you're in good company with friends, it's even better.
No matter where you are in Europe, a Christmas wonderland probably awaits just around the corner.
And So this would be all for now here at the Midday Report. I'm Klaudia Czerwińska. Thank you for joining me, and I hope to see you back here on TVP World for more news in just a moment.